We'll call this public hearing meeting to order at on Monday, October 7, 2019 at 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Horn? Present. Mr. Bateman?
Present.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Present.
Mr. Welch?
Present.
Mr. Parrott?
Present.
Mr. Downs?
Present.
Mr. Keller?
Present.
Mr. Haneke?
Present.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This hearing will come to order. Let the record reflect that this is a public hearing being held pursuant to the requirements of Sections 10 and 20 of the Bond Issue Notification Act of the State of Illinois as amended. Notice of this hearing was published on September 26, 2019 in the Lincoln Courier, a newspaper of general circulation in the city. This is a hearing regarding a plan to issue not to exceed $500,000 in aggregate principal amount of the city's general obligation limited tax bonds, Series 2019. The proceeds of the bonds will be used to finance certain capital expenditures and for the city and pay certain costs of issuance of the bonds. The bonds will be issued by the city in accordance with the provisions of Section 15 of the Local Government Debt Reform Act of the State of Illinois as amended, and shall constitute a general obligation of the city payable from the debt service extension base as permitted by law, and to determine the lien priority of payments to be made from the base to pay the city's limited bonds and such other funds of the city lawfully available and annually appropriated for such purpose. This public hearing is required by Sections 10 and 20 of the Bond Issue Notification Act of the State of Illinois as amended. At the time and place set for the public hearing, residents, taxpayers, and other interested parties will be given the opportunity to express their views for or against the proposed plan of financing the issuance of the bonds and the purpose of the issuance of the bonds. Mr. Kondo?
Thank you, Mayor. The question has come up, why do we do this and when do we do it? This is something that we've done every 3 years, going back many, many years before I was here, and my predecessor and his predecessor were in this office. And the last one we did was in 2017, actually. Began a lot like this. We began work on it in late part of 2016, received the bond proceeds in early January of 2017. So we're at the end of that 3-year cycle again. This is the only bond that the city issues where the tax levy is involved. The other ones that we have are we call alternate revenue bonds, and they're paid for by other revenue streams that come into the general fund. This one we do levy. We attempt to keep that levy as flat as possible so that it has as little impact as possible on the property taxes. What we would intend to do with this is to try to keep the levy for the first year consistent with what we have for the current year. And then if we have to, that'll be adjusted up or down for the second or third year, but shouldn't vary by much. Currently, the bond rates are pretty good. By the time we get everything in order on this, and there's a process to it that takes about 8 weeks. By the time that's done, we'll have to see where we are before they actually issue the bonds. Some of the things that this is for capital expenditures, and just to illustrate some of the things that we've used these for over the past years. We used it for a generator. One time we used it for some improvements to the council chambers, like this TV and some of the other equipment. We did that. Number of things, the garage door for the fire station, one of the fire bays, considerable work done on that a couple of years ago. And Chief Janofsky probably can tell you more about it than I could, but I know we had to spend quite a bit of money there. And the street garage that we have now, most of that was paid for with the utilities, the power companies, remediation fee, but there was some cost to the city, about $350,000 as I recall. And we paid that out of the bond proceeds. Another thing we did with it, which was, in my opinion, one of the best things we did with it, was that Pierce pumper that you see downstairs. It was a 2012, is it, or
11 or 12.
11 or 12. We were in desperate need of that pumper because the previous one was leaking out as fast as they could put water in it. And we had to have that pumper. Rather than put it on a long-term loan, we did take a short-term loan that we paid off in a couple of years for part of that, but we used considerable part of the bond proceeds. It would have been the bond, that must have been the 2010 bond that we used and paid for that. So that's some of the types of things that we use this for. If there are any questions, I would be happy to take those.
Any questions or comments? Beth?
Yes, City Treasurer, we're not using any of those funds for funding a certain organization or anything around here. That rumor's been floating around, and I just want to put it to rest.
Okay.
So it's
No,
for city use only for what we're using for
Yeah, equipment and, yes. things like
potholes, sinkholes,
Yes,
whatever we need to
yes,
do to
yeah,
get.
yeah.
get our-
But you are correct, it won't be given to any other organization. It isn't used for salary costs or
Okay.
benefit costs or, paper towels and,
Right.
other things that we buy during the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Mr. Welch made the motion, Mr. Keller seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Adjourned at 7:06 PM.